I don't know why it's taking time.
I think it has been set to recording.
Okay.
That's what is appearing here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So okay, now it's showing. Okay.
Yeah.
So good evening once again to this evening session. Okay. So it's actually second session of this I mean on of the second day. And thanks for your cooperation. Okay. So today, so now Dr. Deepak Ketty will deliver a talk on sequential networks for speech applications. Let me introduce Dr. Deepak Ketty. Dr. Deepak Ketty is working as assistant professor in the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering at Indian Institute of Information Technology, Harvard. He completed his PhD in Electronics and Electrical Engineering department from IIT Guwahati in the year 2016. So his thesis is titled Foreground Speech Segmentation and Enhancement under the supervision of Professor SRM Prasanna. So we had a wonderful session yesterday. So he received the Bachelor of Engineering degree in Instrumentation Technology from Malnad College of Engineering, University of Mysore, Hassan, India in the year 1999 and Master of Technology MTech degree in Biomedical Instrumentation from Sri Jayatama Rajendra College of Engineering, Mysore, Viseswarai, VTU, Mysore, India, in the year 2002. Prior to this job, he has worked as a technical leader at NXP Semiconductors, Bangalore, from the year 2016 to 2017. And he also worked as a senior project engineer in ST Microelectronics, Bangalore, from the year 2005 to 2010, and mainly focusing on audio post-processing algorithms for the digital television group. And with this, now I'd like to request Dr. Deepak Ketty to deliver his talk. Yes, over to you, Dr. Deepak.
Thank you, Dr. Sipsinkar. Yeah. Somebody raised the hand. Anything? Someone raised the hand. Okay. Good evening. Yeah. Thank you for the kind introduction, Dr. Sipsinkar. So today's talk, this particular session, is on sequence modeling. Of course, sequence modeling is just not limited to recurrent neural network. It does get extended beyond this recurrent neural network. It has LSTM, it has time delay neural network. So all those different networks are there, but keeping time in weave. So let us go through one fundamental neural network, which actually helps modeling the sequence data. And then if time permits, I'll take you through LSTM and also TDN, but I'm doubtful if I can cover all that like within a span of 1.5 hours. So I'll just limit to recurrent neural network. Let us see. So these are some of the reference books that I've referred to prepare this particular talk. So one book is Artificial Neural Networks by B. Yagnanarayana, is a very good fundamental book on artificial neural networks, which you people can refer, not only for this particular session, but any of those networks. Then we do have Neural Networks, a comprehensive foundation by Simon Hyken, is also a very good fundamental book that one can refer to know the literature of the artificial neural networks and its evolvement. And later he also has linked to the current modern day deep learning architectures as well. Then one more good modern day book to refer to learn deep learning is Neural Networks and Deep Learning by Charu C. Agarwal. This is the book which has linked the old literature with that of the new literature. In fact, the book starts with the artificial neural networks and goes on to nicely linking up with the current day deep learning architecture. In fact, I've referred one complete chapter from this book to prepare this particular session. And what's good, like, to then read from the people who have proposed the algorithms. So another such book is by Deep Learning, written by Ian Goodfellow and Yoshio Bengio. Is a very good fundamental book, a modern day book to refer. So these are some of the books that I've referred. Then apart, I also have utilized some of the available sources from the internet. One good resource is the Introduction to Deep Learning, which is hosted by the MIT. So you can find a whole lot of material as far as the deep learning is concerned. Then Simply Learn, Analytics Vidya. Then especially when it comes to the sequential networks, we do require a specialized backpropagation algorithm, which is not the general backpropagation algorithm we generally we tend to use in the fully connected networks. So that's where I've referred some of these internet sources as well. Now, first of all, let us try to understand why do we require a different kind of modeling for some kind of data, and why we cannot use any general architectures that are available in the neural networks. So first of all, let us take this white dot with the plain blue background. If someone asks what would be the trajectory of this point, how does it move? Say this is where the current point lies, and what would be the position of this point in the next moment. So often we find it difficult to say, like, where would be the trajectory of this point. Either it can move up, down, left, right, or if it was a three-dimensional space, it can move anywhere in those spherical surface. So that's one of the inherent difficulties that we have to say, like, what would be the trajectory point as far as this particular moment of this dot is concerned. Now, if I ask you this silly question, then quite obviously anywhere it can move. However, that's what it says, and it's very difficult to predict unless we have some previous data. When I say previous data, it need not be from 5 days back, or it need not be a year back data, but at least what happened to this particular point just few minutes before, or maybe a day before, or 3 days before, depending on the problem statement. I do require the past history for this particular point, if at all it is set in motion, right? So that's where if somebody gives me this past history of that particular point before it reached this particular position, then I can estimate what would be the moment of this particular point in the next moment. When I say moment, it is with reference to time. So I can say, like, what would be the trajectory of this particular point. Either it can move up, down, left, right. So if somebody asks, then quite obvious answer would be, I expect that this dot would move in the linear trajectory, right? So how have I estimated that linear trajectory path? It's because somebody has given me the past history of this particular point before it came to this position at the current instant of time t. So if I have the examples given at the time instant t-1, t-2, t-3, and so forth and so on, the more data we have, better is the projection, or better is the prediction of this particular point and what will be its trajectory. So that is the biggest advantage when we do have the past history with us. So that's where I mean, generally speaking, we know what is the architecture of a neural network is. At least if we have not gone through the entire literature of the neural networks, but at least keeping that buzzword, because this is one of the most happening domains. So at least we must have seen what is a neural network is, what is a fully connected neural network is, what is a multi-layer perceptron is. Even if we don't know, that should be fine. So those are some of the general architectures as far as the neural networks are concerned. And one of the inherent problem of these general neural network architectures is such that they are largely independent with reference to the data, right? Whereas when it comes to the data like speech, audio, video, or a textual data, or it could be any of those biological sequence, it could be a DNA, RNA sequence, or it could be biomedical signals such as ECG, EEG. So they all come under the category of data, and they have large dependencies as far as the sequence is concerned. In a sense, the current data is largely dependent on what is the previous data or previous sample, right? Or what was the previous word was. So there is a large dependency as far as that sequential information is concerned. So so what do we mean by that? Like, so all these data can be interpreted as the time series data. So it need not be limited to the kind of data what I just said. So some of the examples I gave you were speech, audio, video, biological data, and biomedical data. So then apart from that, can you give one or two examples for such time series data that you come across in your day-to-day life?
Stock price, sir.
Sorry?
Stock price.
Yeah, a stock market price. So let's take up one company and track its price variations in the stock market. So is one such kind of data. So currency variations, like let's say, what is the currency of Indian rupees with reference to dollars, right? So all those are. Sorry?
Day temperature.
Yeah, so a temperature measured throughout the entire day could be a time series data, or temperature measured across the year or across 300, 400 years. So nowadays that is the trend. So global warming is happening. We know like why we have to measure the temperature, how critical it is. Even half a degree raise of a temperature can create an havoc in the natural environment. So these are all the time series data that one may come across. And so how do we deal with such data? So here, one of the characteristics of such time series data is that all of those values are represented with reference to time, right? There is a notion of time for all these time series data, right? And we cannot treat them as independent values, right? So for example, the temperature I measure now cannot be totally different or cannot be highly unrelated to the temperature what I measured 1 hour back, right? So likewise, this afternoon. So today's evening temperature does greatly depend on what was the temperature, say today, this afternoon, right? So likewise, yesterday's temperature does greatly depend on today's temperature, right? So likewise, there is a sequential dependency as far as this data is concerned with reference to time axis. Yeah. So once we start treating this time sequential data in a independent fashion, the whole lot of dependency characteristics of the data is lost, right? We are losing it. So there are other forms of data apart from the time series data. Say, for example, text. Though there is no notion of time as far as the text is concerned, but the ordering of the words does greatly influence the semantic meaning of a given sentence. So the words cannot be completely incoherent, right? So in a sense, whatever I'm speaking, so I'm speaking in terms of coining different words in a sequential fashion. If suppose there were no relationship between the current word and the previous word to the future word, whatever I'll be speaking, then the speech becomes incoherent. And once the speech becomes incoherent, it doesn't make any sense for somebody who is listening to us, right? So though there is no strict sense of time dependency, but there is a positional dependency as far as the textual data is concerned. So these are the two forms of data that we can come across as far as the sequence data is concerned. One is the time series data, and always there need not be the notion of the time, but there is a positional dependency as far as the data is concerned. Such kind of data, one such example for such kind of data is the textual data itself. Right. So when we say text data, one of the most common neural networks that comes into our mind when we want to model this textual data is recurrent neural networks. And so forth is all the time series data. So these kind of recurrent neural networks are one of the primary means by which we can realize these kind of data and come up with the solutions as per the applications are concerned. So if there are any questions, do stop me and we can discuss anytime. It need not be to the end of the session. So do feel free to interact. Let us discuss in that sense. So some of the applications to quote as far as this sequence modeling is concerned, one of the most important application has been the speech recognition. So why it has become so important? Because nowadays we can see this going through some of the commercial products like be it like Amazon Echo or Apple Siri or Google ASR. So you consider all these, and they all have become commercially, at least to an extent, partially successful, to say with. Amazon Echo, like in fact, like even it has gone to the extent of supporting the Indian languages as well. So what goes in, as you've been listening to some of the past sessions already, you must know like what happens as far as the neural network is concerned, to which like we tend to feed the handcrafted features from the speech signal. So handcrafted features could be anywhere lying between the spectrogram to the time series data itself. The raw data itself can be fed to the network, or it could be the standard MEL frequency capsular coefficients. So these are some of the feature vectors that we can feed as an input to the network. Then the job of this network is to take this representation and convert it to corresponding text as an output. So this is what our speech recognition is all about. So to that extent, the keyword spotting or the wake up word in the Amazon Echo, that is, we keep saying the wake up words, right, to wake the device up. So such kind of words are all recognized by the recurrent neural networks. Though many of us may not have used these kind of gadgets, nevertheless, I'll give you one example where these kind of recurrent neural networks has become the norm of the day, that we tend to use the service of these recurrent neural networks to do certain tasks. So we'll see what those tasks are. Another application being so a speech-to-speech translation, right? So when I don't know the language, when I go to a foreign country, when I do visit a foreign country, and if I cannot converse with their local language, so how do I converse with them? And believe me, such things are happening, but may not be supporting a large vocabulary, but with the limited context on a day-to-day conversation can all be handled using such applications. And such applications are in use. Say, for example, if we do visit China, so how do we communicate with the people over there, the local people over there? Unless I won't be able to communicate, how will I live? How will I lead the life? So that's where this another application comes into picture. That is, you feed the speech in one language. As an outcome, we do expect the equivalent sentence in the spoken form being thrown out from such applications or apps, basically. So always the input need not be speech and output need not be speech. It is also a possibility that I feed input which is in the textual form and get the output which is also in the textual form, of course in a different language. If so is the case, that block or that module is called as the machine translation module. So this is one such application. Then this application, I'm sure like you people might have encountered already in your day-to-day life, as I said. So perhaps like when you tend to type the mail in your Gmail, right? So once you type 2-3 words, have you experienced that it throws certain recommendations onto the text, whatever you're typing? Have you come across? As soon as you type 3 to 4 words, it starts recommending the 4th or 5th word. Have you experienced this, especially using the Gmail?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
what essentially it is basically, so based on the inference that it has calculated, based on the inputs or certain text that I've typed on the Gmail pad, it tries to predict like what would be the word that I am supposed to type. And believe me, most of the times it gets it right. As far as why, because our sentences are simple constructs, and almost like such millions of data has been pumped into building such kind of network. Quite possibly accurately it predicts like most of the times what would be the word that I'll be typing. It starts recommending those words, and it's correct too most of the times. So not only that, like you people might have used the Google search. So as soon as you type certain words, it starts recommending those next words. Say, for example, what is the best food to eat in, just if you type it as LAS, it starts recommending that the next word is supposed to be the Vegas, right? Las Vegas. So that's the beauty of this recurrent neural network. Based on the past certain inputs, I can predict like what would be the next set of words or next set of spoken samples that one will be speaking. So then apart from that, like this is also another set of applications that you may come across, especially when we feed a static image as an input to the neural network. The neural network should be in a position to caption this particular image. So captioning in a sense, like say, suppose if I do look at the first image, so what all information that is embedded in this particular image. So if we just look at that, it has a foreground object which is a dog basically, and we know like what is the color of the dog is, and it is playing using a ball, and it's trying to jump, and at the background I can see there's a water body, and background that to that, like we do have a museum building. So all such different meanings we can interpret once we look at one static image. It has a wealth of information, and how do we decipher this particular information? So recurrent neural network is one such network which gives this kind of information, and always this output which is captioned in discrete words need not be discontinuous. In a sense, it can be continuum. In a sense, just looking at the image, we have that innate ability, that is humans, we do have innate ability to build a story around this particular image. All that we have seen is this particular image, but still we can go on to build a story. So what if like we want to build a paragraph with this image? So all that is a possibility using this sequential modeling techniques. So likewise, multiple such images and multiple such captions can be generated, and in automatic sense. Yeah. So coming to representation of the sequence data, either they can be real valued or symbolic in its nature, right? These are the two possible representations as far as the sequential data is concerned. So real valued sequences are also at times referred to as the time series data. In practical applications, the use of symbolic values is more common. One such symbolic example, the one I referred just few slides back. Can you give one example for a symbolic value or a symbolic sequential data? Can you give one example for a symbolic sequential data? I gave you the example in this talk itself. So it is the textual data, right? So they're not represented in the real valued a real valued sense, right? So unlike the speech, unlike the audio, unlike the video, where they're all represented in the real valued samples, right? So speech, what would be the typical value if you just open a WAV file or a MP3 data, if you tend to decode, what would be the values that it corresponds to? How are the values represented in a PCM sample? It's a pulse code modulated data, right? I hope like majority of you are from computer science and electronics background, if I'm correct in my assumptions. So we know like what is a PCM, pulse code modulated data, is all about, right? What does a PCM sample consists of? It has a sign bit and it has a magnitude representation. And do you think there are fractional values as well while we do represent the speech data? And if so, what are the range of values that one can see if at all we visualize the waveform using any of those audio players? They're all values which ranges from -1 to less than little +1, right? That is the range of values or the range of amplitudes one can have in the speech sample. Why? Because this is all encoded in the pulse code modulated form, and they're all the real valued sequences. Whereas when it comes to textual data, inherently they're all nothing but each of those characters are all represented on the machine. How do we represent a character on a machine? Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Yeah. So practically speaking, they're all represented by the ASCII values, right? So internally on the machine, it is all represented by the ASCII values. They're all symbolic representation. It could be character on a paper, it could be character on a book, right? So any of those characters are all symbolic in nature. Yeah. So now what happens if we tend to use this sequential data and try to model it using the conventional neural network that we've come across? One of the conventional neural network that we do tend to come across is the fully connected network. So what does a fully connected network consists of? It does consist of an input layer. It consists of an input layer. Then we do have one or two or greater than them as hidden number of hidden layers. Basically, these are hidden layers, and we may have the output layer also. So generally speaking, any neural network will have this flavor. So it has the input layer, it has the hidden layer, and it has the output layer. And in a fully connected network, all nodes of the next layer are connected to all nodes beneath, all nodes just behind that, basically. So in a sense, if we take this particular layer, all of these nodes are connected to all of the nodes in the previous input layer. Likewise, and so forth and so on. So now we tend to feed a sentence. So sentence is a sequential data, right? So if we try to feed such a sequential data to a fully connected network, let us say. So for example, here analytics is hardly any fun. So is a kind of typical sentence that we have, which we have fed as an input to this input layer, and subsequently it will all be percolating to those hidden layers, and eventually based on whatever the decision that output layer takes, it could be a classification problem, it could be a mapping problem, it could be a regression problem, or whatnot, basically. So let us stick to the classification problem because this makes our life easier to understand the neural networks. Let's say the objective is that I feed the English sentence to this particular neural network, and the objective of this neural network is to give an output to say whether the fed sentence is a positive sentence or a negative sentence in terms of sentiments or in terms of emotion, let's say. So if so is the case, what do you think this particular sentence as, that is, analytics is hardly any fun? Do you think like it is a positive sentence or a negative sentence? What do you think?
Negative.
Yeah, so analytics is hardly any fun. So quite obviously it's a sarcastic sentence, right? It's a negative sentence. So likewise, analytics must be fun. So what do you expect this sentence to be? Analytics must be fun. So it is a
Positive.
positive sentence or a positive sentiment sentence, right? So generally we do expect the output to be giving, let's say, 1 if it is a positive sentence, or it could be giving a 0 if it is a negative sentence. So quite obviously we do expect 0 from the first network and 1 from the second network if it is a classifier to classify the sentence to be a positive or a negative sentence. Now if we look at the number of words, basically, so the first sentence has got 5 words, whereas the second sentence has got only 4 words. So this is one of the problems. Now, do you expect like always the sentence to be limited by 3 to 4 or 4, 5 words, or they can also be varying in its nature? What do you expect in general
Varying.
textual data? Quite obviously, the number of words the number of words in a given sentence could be varying, right? So that is one of the major bottleneck as far as feeding such textual data to these kind of networks. That is this kind of network. That is one problem. The input is not limited by its size. So just now I'm talking about a sentence. What if like I do expand it and increase the scope of the network to feed a paragraph? So I want the network to say whether it is a positive paragraph or a negative paragraph, or just feed the entire book to the network. Now, is it possible for me to keep on expanding the input nodes depending on the size of the data? Is it even practically possible? So if I do take the huge volume of a book, for example, then what happens to the number of input nodes that I can have if I keep feeding the words?
Not possible.
It exponentially increases, right? The input number of nodes exponentially increases with the increase of the data, right? So that's one of the problems this particular network architecture has. So not only this particular problem, there is another important problem associated with this general architecture of fully connected network. Yeah, as I said, the sentiment analysis faces the challenge of variable length inputs. That is one of the challenges that we have. And the network architecture is such that it does not contain any helpful information as far as the sequential nature of the data is concerned. So if we do look at this network, you can see that these nodes are not connected with each other. So in a sense, there is no passing of information from this particular node to this particular node. Each layer will act independently, right? The weights associated with this network is different than the weights associated in this network, and the weights associated with this neuron is totally independent of this particular neuron, and there is no exchange of information from this node to this node. In a sense, it won't be able to build the logistics as far as the sequential nature of the data is concerned. Now, this is one of these are the two major problems that are associated with any general neural network architectures as far as the applications are concerned. Now, so how does that treat then? What is the problem then? So generally speaking, this particular generic architecture treats the sequential data as sequential textual data as as simply a bag of words. So what do we mean by a bag of words? Especially people who worked in NLP domain, at least they should be knowing what is this bag of words is. What do we mean by bag of words? Can anyone explain?
A frame kind of one.
I'm afraid not. So what do we mean by bag of words in a literal sense? Take the literal meaning of that English sentence. Can you
Collection
guess?
of words. Is it collection of words?
No, I'm afraid not. Sorry. Of course, it is a collection of words, but what words? What are the words like are we talking about?
Similar kind of words.
So say suppose in the previous example, we have this analytics is hardly any fun. So take this sentence take this sentence, treat individual words as one block. So put all of the blocks inside a bag and cover it and close that. So now no more user would be able to see the words inside the bag. So is it possible to take those words and construct the sequence of a given sentence? Is it possible? It's fine as long as they are simple words, simple sentences, small sentences. What if like I throw you a challenge of a paragraph? So take all those words in the paragraph, put them in a bag, close that, blindly let the person take the words one by one, and let us ask him to reconstruct the paragraph. Is it even possible, like when paragraph is quite significantly large?
Not possible, sir.
Yeah, so that's exactly how these neural networks behave. It just behaves like a bag of words, like, yeah. So that's the problem. And what have we lost? Like once we put all these words inside the bag, what have we lost? Like we basically have lost the what information we have lost. Why are we not able to reconstruct the paragraph? Or
Sequence of words.
Right, exactly. So it has lost the positional sequence of those words. Once we have lost it, there is no way to retrieve it back from the bag of word. That's one of the inherent problem in these kind of fully connected networks. So that's what it says, like basically. So the first foremost problem is that it tries to ignore the ordering of words, like so yeah, as I said, it may work well. These kind of networks may work well still if at all the data, the sequential pattern is of reasonable size. But when it becomes too large to handle, such networks simply fail. So that's where we have to bring the dependency of these sequential modeling techniques. So another example to give you is the cat chased the mouse. The mouse chased the cat. So can you just comment on these two sentences? What are these two sentences, sir?
One is possible, the other is not possible.
Fine. Entropy is higher in case of what? Which sentence? The second one. The mouse chased the cat. Hardly it happens, but it's not impossible. We have seen videos where mouse is trying to scare the cat, and cat is trying to scare the leopard, and all that is possible. But if you
The
just look at,
information is totally different in due to this change of words.
yeah, just if you look at those two sentences, they're all one and the same as far as the words are concerned. But the meaning is totally different from 1 to 2. There's a big difference between 1 to 2. So these two sentences clearly demonstrates that bag of words approach simply doesn't work. So we do approach this problem as a bag of word. We do tend to lose the linguistic intelligence as far as the sentence is concerned. Now, how do we preserve it is all the challenge that we have. How do we resolve this particular problem, right? So now, how do we take that particular fully connected network and somehow let us change that particular network such that it preserves the ordering of those words in some way. In a sense, it has to encode that sequential nature of the data in the network itself. So and possibly when I want to design such a network, it should not have huge number of parameters, right? Parameters need to be limited, so that like I should be able to train with some limited time and derive the usefulness of that particular network. So that's what we'll try to attempt and design a network which totally supports these kind of data, right? So recurrent neural networks provide excellent example of how do we preserve that sequential information, the ordering information in the network, and generally people tend to use this recurrent neural network in order to preserve the temporal context of the data. So what happens in the recurrent neural network? There is always an one-to-one correspondence between the layers in the network, and there is specific positional value as far as those nodes are concerned. And these specific positions preserves the timestamp if it is a time series data, or positional stamp if it is positional or symbolic reference of the data. So let's see that. Yeah, so in what way we are modifying the generic architecture of the fully connected network? This is how we are trying to modify them. Inputs are allowed to directly interact with the downstream hidden layers. In a sense, whatever we feed input, right, it can directly interact with the hidden layers, which was not so in the case of the fully connected network. Why? Because at best, the input can get interfaced to the input layer, and input layer is the one which actually gets linked to the first hidden layer, and so forth and so on. That is how the fully connected network was. Whereas in this case, we are letting that input to directly interact with the hidden layers. That's how we are modifying the architecture. So each layer uses the same set of parameters. In a sense, the same parameters are shared from one hidden layer to the next hidden layer, which was not so in the case of the fully connected layer. Why? Because the weight matrices of this particular layer is totally different than that of the next hidden layer. There was no connection at all. Of course, there is a loose sense of connection as far as the back propagation algorithm is concerned, but there is no sharing of the parameters that happens in this particular network. Now, let us try to abolish that, and let's say we share those parameters across the hidden layers such that the same weight gets updated based on the information that it flows to the network. So since that same layer wise architecture is repeated with reference to time, and henceforth such a network is referred to as the recurrent, right? It recurs, it loops on its own. Henceforth, the name recurrent neural networks comes into picture. Now, the advantage of using such a network is that the two problems what we had, that is the variable length sequences. So this network will support the variable length sequences, and it enables the network to track the long-term dependencies without increasing the nodes as far as the input is concerned. So then the biggest advantage is it maintains the information. It maintains the information of order about the order itself. And the big deal about this network is each hidden layer share the parameters. So these are some of the big changes that happens in the conventional fully connected neural network with reference to this sequential modeling. Now, let us take that multi-layer perceptron as it is, and let's try to convert that multi-layer perceptron with whatever the frugal sentences we put in those slides. Let us use those information and try to convert this multi-layer perceptron into the equivalent recurrent neural network. How do we do that, right? Let's try to attempt this. So this is how a general multi-layer perceptron looks in its simplest way, or a simplest form. So we do have the input layer and hidden layer. It need not be confined to one hidden layer. It can have multiple hidden layers, and each hidden layer may have multiple nodes. So for a moment, let's forget about those number of nodes that I can have in a given hidden layer. Let's say it has one single node which acts like a hidden layer, and that in turn it's connected to the output layer, right? So each of these blocks, that is input, hidden layer, and output, they're all connected through the arcs. So if we see this is an arc basically. Arc has the direction and the path which helps us to connect two different nodes. So now if we recall this particular path, like, do you think like it is all weighted by unit factor, or it is something else? What do you expect this arc to be? Do you think like this arc is unit weighted path which connects the two different blocks, or is it something else with reference to the fully connected network? What do you expect? So now whatever has been depicted in this picture has got a unit weight. Do you expect like all these arcs to be of unit weight?
No, sir, no.
So there would be certain
different
weights
and bias.
Yeah, so it will be connected through set of weights and bias, as somebody pointed out rightly, and they are the learnable parameters as far as the neural network is concerned, right? So those are the parameters that we want to learn as far as the application is concerned. So now, in place of that simple architecture, let us try to complicate our life a little, basically bringing more number of deeper layers, basically more number of layers, hidden layers. So let's see how does the network changes or behaves like, right? So let's say I do have the input layer and multiple hidden layers, unlike the one I had in the previous. So if we do look at that, each of those hidden layer will have the parameters indexed as W1, B1, which is indicative of that, like they are the parameters belonging to the hidden layer 1. So likewise W2, B2, W3, B3. Right, so then the output itself, like basically, so these are all the parameters that one can come across, like when we are dealing with the deep neural network, right? So a multi-layer perceptron. So yeah, so since each hidden layer has its own weights and activations, they behave independently, right? There is no sharing of the weights or the bias, basically, as far as the vanilla MLP is concerned, right? The weights and biases of these hidden layers are different, right? Now, what is our objective? Our objective is to create certain relationship between one hidden layer and to that of the next hidden layer. How can we do that? Or if at all we can do that, then how do we do that? Like, yes, we can do that, but how do we do that? Like, is what the question at hand is, right? So let's look at that. That's fine. I can skip this. Yeah. So let's take that. Let's merge all these nodes. If you just look at this diagram, what different like it is with reference to the previous diagram I projected. If you just take this particular diagram, there is some change it has undergone. What is that particular change it has undergone?
So we have a feedback loop here.
No, don't take the right image for your interpretation. You just take the first figure.
Sir, instead of W1, B1, here we have made it as W,
yeah, B. Good, right? So there we had all the indexes, that is W1, B1, W2, B2, W3, B3. Now we have removed those subscripts from those weights and biases. And now we are saying like all these hidden layers has got the same W and B, same W and B, same W and B, right? So, but still I need to retain the hidden layers. I cannot knock the hidden layers off. So, but when I say it is same W and B, what is happening with reference to the nodes, different nodes or different layers basically here? Just take this first figure into your interpretation. All these have now turned out to be only the W and B, right? So what is happening? What is that we've changed basically? Of course, we knocked different parameters, that is W1, W2, W3, and made it all a common parameter, that is W, right? So when I say W and B, all these parameters are being shared from one hidden layer to the next hidden layer, and so forth and so on, right? As long as we have that many hidden layers. So all those hidden layers shares the same W, same B, but they're updated in some sense. In what way it gets updated? That is where this looping comes into picture. Why this looping comes into picture? It's because the same W, same B is being looped back into the hidden layer. You can merge all those different hidden layers and make it as one single node, but in a looped fashion. Why we are looping? Because it's the same set of parameters that is W and B being shared across different hidden layers. That's what it means. So then input layer is retained as it is, and the output layer is also retained as it is. So this is the general representation of a recurrent neural network is. So if you just look at the literature, this is how it gets represented in the literature. It has got one node, which is generally the output node. How can we make out? Depending on the arrow, depending on that arc and its direction, we can make out like which is the output node, which is the input node, and which is the hidden layer. So, I mean, it's not just confined to one hidden layer, it can have multiple hidden layers. And since the parameters W and B are shared, that's where this loop comes into picture. Now, this is fine. This is the symbolic representation of a recurrent neural network, but what is the internal architecture of that recurrent neural network is all about. So we'll see what is that recurrent neural network architecture is all about. So this is how it looks like. So earlier we had this MLP input layer, two hidden layers, and the output layer. They were all fully connected. So collapse this hidden layer to represent them as single H with the looped, self-looped fashion. And there is output Y and there is an X, which is input. Now there is one more increment with reference to the diagram which we saw in the previous slide. What is that? Like, what is the change that you can see in this particular way of representing the recurrent neural network? What is this? So we do have the arc represented by certain weights, right? That is B, C, A. So they all have come into picture. So let's see. Let's try to decipher this network a little bit to know the internal architecture of the recurrent neural network. So this is how it looks. This is how we have collapsed that MLP to make it a recurrent neural network. Some of the parameters that we do have in the recurrent neural network is A, B, and C. These are the parameters that we are most likely be interested to train the neural network, right? So this is how that recurrent neural network is architect, right? So we do have this H connected through C, then connected through A, Y. So if we do expand this neural network, we can look at that. There is the positional time sequence that is X of t, and to the left of it is the past samples, and to the right of it is the future samples. So in a sense, this recurrent neural network can be a causal system or a non-causal system. What do we mean by the causality of a given system is? What is the causality of? Sorry?
Non-anticipatory nature. Non-anticipatory. That means current output should not depend on future value.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you. So when we say the network is a causal network, so at best, like it can be dependent on the current sample and the past samples. It cannot be dependent on the future samples. So such systems becomes the non-causal system. So I mean, that's fine as far as the non-causality is concerned. What is one inherent problem that you can anticipate when it becomes a non-causal system, and if my network is dependent on too much of future samples? What is one of the drawbacks that you can encounter as far as this network architecture is concerned? What do you expect?
Future predict may be correct or may not be correct.
No, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I can have a lot many future samples as well for the prediction. That's how I would have trained my neural network as. Like I have errors to the back, or I mean, previous samples, I can also have error to the future samples also. That is not a problem. So what is the problem? What is the actual problem if I start depending too much on the future samples? So what is it explicitly says? So x of t is dependent on x of t plus 1, x of t plus 2, x of t plus 3. Say suppose I do depend on the speech sample which you utter tomorrow, let's say. So what happens to the network output? Say suppose you're typing something to your Gmail, and it is expecting a future sample that you're supposed to type like say tomorrow. So you don't get the output of the network today, I mean, at least. Yeah. So what is the problem? I have exaggerated the statement now.
Not real time.
Yeah, exactly right. So if I make my network dependent on too much of future samples, then it loses the notion of the real time. I mean, fine, it is fine as long as I'm watching the cricket match, as long as it predicts the trajectory of the ball. Maybe in the next ball, if there is a 1 ball delay, or if there is a fraction of time delay, that is all fine. We can live with. But what if like this guy would wait for 1 over to finish? Then no more it is real time, right? So that is the problem. So that's where we can depend on few future samples, but we cannot depend too much on future samples. That is one problem, right? So hope these things are clear. We do expand this h. So x of t corresponds to h of t. That is the state representation of the neuron at the current instant of time t. So likewise, the state will have a previous representation also. That is h of t minus 1, h of t minus 2, h of t minus 3, and so forth and so on. As we do have previous samples for input samples and previous states for the h, and we do have the previous outputs as far as the y is concerned, right? If we are talking about y of t, there could be previous output sample, previous output samples, and so forth and so on. So from here on, let us try to take up that network which only is dependent on the past samples and at best the current sample, not on the future samples. So let us make our life simplified, right? In order to learn the architecture. So let us depend on only the past and the present samples. So generally speaking, the recurrent neural network is of broadly 4 types. So one is the one-to-one network, which is a trivial network, and it could be any network, right? If it is one-to-one, it need not be recurrent neural network. That is one thing. And then one-to-many, that is you feed one single vector as an input, you get many vector as an output, basically. So then many to one, you feed many inputs and get one output. So it could be many to many. So let's go through each of these networks one by one. So let's skip that first type. It is very trivial. You feed single input and get that single output. So let's skip this particular type of network. Let's go to this one-to-many. That is, you feed one single input entity or one single variable as an input to this network. You get multiple outputs. So can you give one example for such kind of network where we came across? I quoted many applications. Can you give one such example wherein it takes one single input and gives multiple outputs?
Google search.
Google search, like fine. If it is single word, that's fine. Can you give more precise example that we came across?
Some kind of a demultiplexer.
Yeah, that is all fine. But as far as the application is concerned, what is the real practical application that you came across that I've projected in this session itself? Yeah. Do you remember that there was an image of a dog, and how about the captions? What kind of what is the nature of that input is? So it's the single image that I'm feeding to the network, and what is the expected output from that image? It's a sequence of words, right? So when I say sequence of words, they're all multiple outputs. So is one such example for one-to-many recurrent neural network. So, and it could be multiple inputs and single output. Can you give one example that we came across in this session? What is the example?
Recognizing an animal.
Recognizing an
Animal like dog.
Some sentence is given,
uh-huh.
and then the output is either true or false.
Yeah, so it could be positive emotion or a negative
positive.
emotion, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that is the example we went through. There we fed like multiple words to the network, and the expected outcome of that particular network to say whether it is a positive sentence or a negative sentence. So that is an example for multiple inputs and one single output. right? So then it could be many to many. Can you give example? This might be easier for you, since you've been listening to this like for almost 3-4 sessions. What is an example for multiple inputs and multiple outputs? How about speech recognition? How about speech recognition? What are you giving as an input? It's the multiple samples, right? Or multiple feature vectors that basically you feed as an input. As an outcome, like, is it single output or multiple outputs? It's the sequence of words, right? Which converts that spoken form of sentence to the textual form. It is many to many. Likewise, any other examples for many to many? Many to many. So speech to speech translation, machine translation, they're all many to many types, right? So hope you got the notion of the architecture of recurrent neural network and in what all forms they can be, and what type of architecture is preferable to based on the application. So we have to choose the right architecture as far as the recurrent neural network is concerned. Hope this part is clear. So let me know if I'm going slow or fast, like I can vary my pace as per your requirement.
It's okay, sir.
Yeah, fine then. Okay. So let's go a little more deeper into the architecture itself. It's not just writing the block diagram, but we have to give certain meanings to all these. Let's try to give those meanings with reference to some math expressions as far as the network is concerned. So as I said, it is xt and y cap of t. Why it has to be y cap of t? All this while I didn't use that. Why it has to be y cap of t?
Expected.
So it is an estimated output, right? I don't have the actual output. So most of the literature do knock this cap off in its representation, but don't get confused when we say output of a neural network. Always it is an estimated output, right? So that's where this cap is introduced to the network. So that's where these parameters also comes into picture. We had input node, and we had the hidden layer, hidden node basically. So then we do have the output node, right? So then they're all dependent on the timestamp, right? If we are talking about xt, so we do have x2, x1, x0, and all these arcs which essentially connects input to the hidden layer is all weighted by wxh. So likewise, when we connect this hidden neuron to the output node, it is all connected through why. So then the state h itself is all represented by whh. Now these are the weights or the learnable parameters as far as the neural network is concerned. Now if you do recall, if you just want to say what is this arc, that is the looping arc with reference to this, what makes sense basically? There is a recurrence. That is, how can you relate this particular architecture? In what sense you can relate them?
The weight gets updated with every new incoming data over time.
That is fine. As I flip this input, like if it keeps on traversing, weights gets updated. I agree with you. But what is this recurrence loop with reference to this architecture? Hope I can take some more time, Dr. Sipsankar.
Yes, sir. It's fine, sir. Yeah.
So this recurrence loop is nothing but, if you look at that, the output is all fed back as an input. So how do you relate to this? I mean, I've just expanded this simpler notation of recurrent neural network into its detailed architecture. So if you just look at that, output of the state is all fed as an input to the next state, right? When I say next state, what do I mean by that? With reference to what I'm talking about the next state. So let's say this is, right, it is time. So for xt, if that H is all nothing but HT, then the previous state would be HT minus 1. And the previous state is HT minus 2. The previous state is all HT minus 3, and so forth and so on. Is that clear? So what is happening in a sense, basically? So when the output of one state is all fed as an input to the next state with reference to the notion of the time, in a sense, the state is being carried from one time stamp to next time stamp. Is that clear? Is that clear?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Yeah. So now, don't get bogged down by the equations. It's quite simple if we try to understand. So we do have this HT, which is a new state, which is all driven by this input XT. If so is the case, then this HT is all nothing but the function, and it is not a normal function. It is a parameterized function driven by that factor W, right? Weight matrix W. So now this function is dependent on two parameters. So that is HT minus 1 and the XT. So it means that it is dependent on the current input vector at time step t, and the previous old state, that is HT minus 1. When you feed these two to this function, it manifests itself as a current state, that is HT. Hope you got this. So now this is what it says. I still say this XT is still dependent on XT minus 1, XT minus 2, XT minus 3. How would I say that? How will I say that? Like this XT, this function FW is not only dependent on XT, but it is also dependent on XT minus 1, XT minus 2, XT minus 3.
Basically, HT minus 1 is dependent on HT minus 2.
Right, exactly. That HT minus 1 would have dependent on XT minus 1, right? So that's the reason. And
Is
that
it a recurrence relation? Like
yeah, it is the recurrence relation, and that this HT will become HT minus 1 for the next time step, right? So quite obviously, then there is a recurrence relationship as far as this time is concerned, and it carries that information, all those information basically, especially XT and HT. So entire information is all carried to the next time state. Hope this point is clear. This is where the essence of recurrent neural network lies.
Sir, one
Yeah.
yeah, in the previous slide, we see that we have a number of hidden layers are represented as shown here, or is it that means in the horizontal sense, or is it in the vertical sense? Means
Yeah, the hidden layer is this. This is one hidden layer. This is one hidden layer. This is one hidden layer. So these are all the different hidden layers. That is how it is shown.
yes, means we will have maybe one more hidden layer above this.
Yeah. So they are deeper. They're called as deep recurrent neural networks.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then comes the output vector itself. As we saw that the arc is all weighted by WHY. So WHY multiplied by that HT, the current state of the neuron. So that multiplication factor gives rise to the predicted output YT cap basically. So then what does that HT itself consists of, right? HT does not only consist of that H state, but it also has to have that input, right? So that's where this thing comes into picture. That is WHH, the state weight matrix itself, multiplied by HT minus 1, add WXH multiplied by XT. So this forms the linear model aspect of the neural network. And neural networks are no more neural networks as long as we can bring the what is one more element that I need to bring basically? This is a linear equation. There's no big deal, right? So there's no fun in neural network unless we bring
The activation function.
right? The activation function is a non-linear function. Activation function is a non-linear function. Say, for example, most of the cases when we talk about recurrent neural network, we do use the hyperbolic tan h basically. So this is generally what we use, and pass the entire output. Get the function of this, like this is what is HT is all about. So these are the parameters essentially what we need to learn. So how do we learn that, and what are these weight vectors are? So let's decipher. Let's try to decipher all those possibly. And not only that, like we do have input neuron and the estimated output. Generally, we need to train these parameters. How do we train these? Like for that, like we need to estimate the error. How do we estimate that particular error or the loss function? Basically, if we do have a labeled data, they're all meant for the supervised based training techniques. We do have the labels. So if whatever the difference with reference to that labeled data gives us the error, and we can derive the loss function. And loss function, it's not one unit of loss function that we tend to get in a fully connected layer. Each of those time states will also have independent components of those loss values, right? So these loss function could be as simple as a mean square error or a logistic function. So any such different loss functions are there in the literature. We can use them and derive the independent components and integrate all that information to derive one loss value that is capital L. Now, once we have derived this based on that deviation from that of the labeled information, do back propagate to adjust all these parameters. That is the weight matrices of all this neural network. Hope this point is clear. If you have any questions, you can stop me. Yeah. So now that's fine. We have designed a neural network. We know what is this loss value is all about. We also said like the definition of what is the WH5, WHH, WXH, what is X naught is, what is Y naught is. This is all fine. I mean, as far as the understanding of that architecture is concerned, we have understood to an extent. But how do we actually adjust these weights? What do we mean by that? What do we mean by adjusting these weights, and how does this weight matrix behaves? And that's what we'll try to decipher. Give me 10 minutes, like I'll try to explain that and wind this off basically. Let's take one simple example, very simple example to understand how does this recurrent neural network works basically. Let's say we do have a word called as hello. Let's assume that we want to design a recurrent neural network for this particular word, that is hello. Now, this hello word consists of 4 different characters, that is H, E, L, L, and O basically. Let's presume that I feed HELL as the input to the network, and recurrent neural network should be in a position to estimate what would be the next letter. And it's a very trivial example that we have taken. So is the case because to understand the network as simplistically as possible. So let's say we do have this HELL fed as an input to the network. If we do want to estimate the 4th letter, quite obviously it will be O. Now we want the recurrent neural network to learn this basically. Now the vocabulary of this particular word does only consist of 4 different letters, right? Possible letters. So HELO. Using these 4 possible letters, I can construct the word hello. That is fine, absolutely fine, right? So what does the formula says? Now, in order to estimate the state HT, which is a function of previous state, that is HT minus 1, and also the current input XT. So that we saw in the previous equation as well. So once we get this HT, we can go on to plug in this particular thing onto tanh function and so forth and so on. Let's not try to worry too much about that. So here HT is the new state and HT minus 1 is the previous state, and the current input is nothing but XT. That is what we have at hand, right? So now once we have that HT, taking the simplest form of the recurrent neural network with the activation function tanh, the weight at the recurrent neuron is WHH. So that is the state itself, that multiplied by the previous state, that is HT minus 1 plus WXH into XT. So now we want to estimate what is this WHH is all about, and the HT minus 1 and HT, WXH, XT. So these are all the things that we want to estimate. Like, let's see how do we estimate this. So once we get these value put in this equation, it's easy for us to calculate the HT. So we'll go one by one. Yeah. So the and from the output side, so what does the output says basically? YT is nothing but WH5 multiplied by HT, right? So that is what it says. HT we would have calculated using the previous equation. Okay, so let's stop a while and analyze these sentences, because this gives the crux of a story. How do we build the recurrent neural network itself, right? So a single time step of the input is supplied to the network, that is XT is supplied to the network one at a time. That's it, right? So we then calculate its current state, that is HT, using a combination of current input and previous state, that is HT minus 1, right? So the current HT becomes HT minus 1 for the next time step. Then we can go as many time steps as the problem demands. That depends on the application, right? So once all the time steps are completed, the final current state is used to calculate the output YT. That is how we'll calculate the YT. The output is then compared to the actual output and the error is generated. The error is then used for the back propagation in order to adjust these weights, right? So all these sentences tells you the story about the recurrent neural network itself. So before even to start, basically, so we have to take these inputs. What are the inputs to the network? As I said, it is HELL. So we cannot straight away feed these characters into the network. I basically need to convert these characters into one hot encoded form. What is this one hot encoded form basically? So as I said, there are 4 different characters in my vocabulary. So each one will have one positional representation. Say for example, H has as the representation, that is 1, and rest all of those values are represented as zeros. So this forms the one hot encoded vector for the letter H. So likewise, the E, so the positional second positional value is all set as 1, rest of the values are all set as 0. That basically represents the letter E. So then we do have L, which is nothing but the third positional value, which is set as 1, and the next vector is all same. That is, the same vector is all fed as an input to the network. Hope this one hot encoded vector is understood. This is how we do represent the textual data, right? So once we have created these input vectors, all that we have to create the weight matrices. So one of the first weight matrix that we are concerned about is the arc, which actually helps connect the input to that of the hidden neuron. So what is that weight matrix? It is nothing but WXH. Let's assume that weight matrix is of the size 3 cross 4. Then we do take this matrix. First, I need to have some initial values stored in this weight matrix. So what could be those initial values be? How would I initialize this matrix?
Either 0, random,
yeah,
many possible ways are there.
Yeah, so possibly I can initialize them with some of those zeros, but if we do have zeros, like one of the problem, if do multiply this weight matrix with something else, the results are all nothing but zeros. Rather, we can take some random values to begin with, right? WXH to some random values to begin with. So now we have initialized our weight matrix with some random values. Let's take this WXH, multiply it with XT, so this particular product is required when we want to predict what? Basically, when we want to calculate where this particular product is essential, that is WXH into XT. Why do we require this product?
To feed as input to the activation function.
That is TANH. If you recall, there were two
Yes.
product terms, right? One
Yes.
was WHH
And WXH.
WXH terms, right? One such term is WXH multiplied by XT. So what is the first input vector for me? First input vector for me is nothing but that H, which is all represented as an one hot encoded vector. So take this 3x4 matrix that is WXH, multiply it with this one hot encoded vector, we do get some value, that is 0.28, 0.90, 0.53 is some value. Don't worry about that, which is nothing but the column vector, right? Do retain this. Let's go on to calculate that WHH into HT minus 1. HT minus 1 is the previous state. What is the previous state for that HT? Of course, we would have started with some clean values to begin with. I don't have any previous state to begin with. When I feed letter H to the network, quite obviously that HT minus 1 should all be set as zeros. Is that fine? Then I missed out one particular aspect of this network. We do have bias. As generally any other networks will have bias, this also has a bias, right? So take this term, that is WHH multiplied by HT minus 1 plus bias. So this WHH is one weight value, which is, let's say, some initialized with some random value, that is 0.42. Then let's say we'll initialize that bias by some random value, that is 0.56. So take this and multiply it with this HT minus 1. So eventually this all turns out to be 0. Then all that we are left with is the bias term. Why? Because it is additive term. So this becomes 0.56, 0.56, 0.56. All elements are all one and the same. Now we have calculated this WHH into HT minus 1 plus bias. We also have calculated WXH into XT. Take these two product terms, plug into this activation function, that is TANH, add them together, pass it through this TANH, we get HT, right? They take these two column, one column, add it with another column, we do get another column, so pass it through the TANH basically, and there we go, we get the HT. So this is what our HT says, right? So now all that we have done is we have calculated WXH, XT, we have calculated HT. What else is remaining for us?
Y cap of T output.
Yeah, so now we have to estimate the output, right? So how do we calculate that Y cap of T is all that like we'll bother about, right? Fine, I've taken one more step basically to give you the notion of that HT minus 1. So the next input to the network is quite obviously E. So E is all that is supplied, and plug into this particular equation and recalculate all those parameters. We do get this basically WHH HT minus 1. When we feed E as an input, we get these values. WXH multiplied by XT, we get these values. Take these values and then calculate that HT, and once we have that HT, we do have HT minus 1, then let us try to estimate the output, that is YT, right? So YT is all given by WHY multiplied by HT, right? So that is what it is. Then let us try to initialize this with some random values to begin with. That multiplied by that HT, so we do get one vector, which is an estimated output vector. So what do you think? Like, how do you interpret this value to be? what it is estimating. So it has got 1.9, it has got
Probability of-
1.93, it has got 1.13, it has got 0.95, and it has got 1.27. So going by like whichever gives the highest output is what like my output to be as, it gives me a kind of probability value, right? It is still not a probability value. Why? Because it is greater than 1. We can see the values which are greater than 1. So they are notional representation of weights of what is supposed to be the output as. So if so is the case, what is the fourth output? This is what it is saying. The network is saying the fourth output. What is this fourth output to be as? Okay.
Average of 3.
No, take that value, take that, take that output value, whatever the values that we derive, basically. Let's say we have 0.4, 0.19, 0.16, pass it through a softmax function. Why do we have to pass it through a softmax function?
It finds which is the maximum out of the array.
So it basically takes all these real values and converts it to a range. It's a scaling factor, right? What scaling factor does it convert, this softmax? It converts to a range of values which lies between 0 and
1.
1. Yeah. So and it's a non-linear function. It's a non-linear function, right? So which is an activation function for the output. Output activation is not tanh. It's a different activation function, which is softmax here in this case. So take all these values, pass it through a softmax function. It gives me the class-wise probabilities for the next estimated letter. It's trying to predict the next letter, right? So we go by this. What is the predicted value? What could be the predicted value? Quite obviously
H.
this 0.41, which is letter H. Letter H. So whereas we were supposed to get the letter
O.
O,
E.
right? So what has gone wrong with our network? What has gone wrong with our network?
So it's a wrong prediction because of insufficient data, insufficient training.
Yeah, right. So we had initialized the weights with some random values to begin with. Now those random values will not help me converge the network to its optimal results, right? That's the reason we are getting wrong outputs. Now, how do we take care of this? How do we converge the results? Now, this is a convex optimization problem, right? So using gradient descent, we can try to converge that, right? So that's where this backpropagation algorithm comes into picture. Now, I'll not get into backpropagation algorithm because if I do get into that, it may take another 10-15 minutes easily. So hope like I'll end this talk here. Basically, the objective was to introduce you to the concept of recurrent neural network and getting to know the fundamental concepts as far as this recurrent neural network was. So now, instead of using this textual data, you can also feed the real valued samples like a speech or audio and use it for different applications that we spoke about. So with that, I'll conclude my topic at this point. If you do have any questions, let us give some time for that discussion.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Excellent presentation. Sir, if I want, as a beginner, if I want to learn about this one, which platform will be better, sir? It's a very, many people are saying that MATLAB will be a better one. Another set of people, Python, that one will be a better choice. In your view, if a beginner has to implement and try to have a notion of these algorithms, which platform will be better, sir?
Yeah, sir, as someone has suggested you, if you're familiar with MATLAB, then certainly you can use that. One of the biggest advantages, we can build small networks, we can commit a lot of errors, we can play around with that. Once we get the notion of that network, MATLAB is of no use, basically. So MATLAB is only useful as long as we want to develop algorithms for a small amount of data. Whereas when it comes to ML and deep learning sort of thing, MATLAB may be used to learn the concepts of it. Once we are thorough with the concepts, we have to quickly move to the Python platforms like TensorFlow and such library rich packages, because we won't be able to handle such large data in the MATLAB. It's not either I won't be suggesting that. Like, yeah. Hope that question is answered.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions?
How do we determine the number of hidden layers in a recurrent network? Does it depend on, for instance, if I'm talking about word prediction or in that, does it depend on something like a Markov chain, the number of previous words I want to use for my prediction?
Yeah. So it all depends on applications, right? Say, for example, the Gmail, whatever it makes use of. So anywhere it could be, always we do write the mails by breaking them into shorter sentences. So they're all sentence-based recurrent neural networks. So typically, you would say that recurrent network would be somewhere in the range of 5 to 10. And mind it, like it doesn't depend, the input nodes, that is XT and all that, it doesn't depend on the number of words that we are using, basically. So what governs that factor is the HT, basically. How much memory is it's being carried from one point to another point. So there is one more problem as far as this conventional recurrent neural network is concerned. That is when we tend to backpropagate using that partial derivative chain rule. As the length of the network increases exponentially, we do get into problem called as exploding and vanishing gradients, gradient problem. So that's where that LSTM architecture is proposed, and we can avoid to an extent of whatever the problems that we have in the recurrent neural network. That's where that LSTM comes into picture. We cannot have too large temporal dependency to pass back a large number of samples or future samples. So there LSTM, it does it smartly. It only takes the parameters which are essentials as far as the application is concerned. If it is not so essential, it tries to knock that dependency in the temporal context. So anyway, that's a different concept altogether. Hope I've answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions you have?
Yes, sir. There are some questions in the chat box. Yeah.
Okay, chat box, right? Tomorrow at what time the session starts? Okay, can you suggest some good sites to refer for implementation of applications using RNN and LSTM? I've given you all those video links. Simplilearn has the Python script implemented also. And if you go to deep learning toolbox of a MATLAB, so you must find a lot of sources to implement this LSTM as well. That should not be a problem. There are a lot of websites which gives you the source code, but always do refer the standard one because that's guaranteed. Basically, the quality is guaranteed. That's the reason. You can refer Simplilearn. There, the codes are available. Hope I've answered that. Sir, step to collect information for neural networks for new learners to become expert. I've quoted a few fundamental textbooks. That is Artificial Neural Networks by B. Yajnanarayana and Fundamentals of Artificial Neural Networks by Simon Hyken. And there's one more good book by Fawcett. So Faussett, so which is also a thoroughly nicely written book. You can refer these fundamental books. Once you get hold of artificial neural networks, it's only that you can add current literature to your kitty by reading the scientific publications. That makes your life easier to get into this field of neural networks. Hope I've answered that question. Yeah. So if no other questions, yeah, need to learn mathematics. Yes, of course. But not great deal of mathematics. We need not dive deep into it, but at least linear algebra and probability theory. Not a very complicated linear algebra and probability theory. But if you can go through and come from the machine learning perspective to this deep learning, that will be excellent. When to go transformer applications, what are the requirements? Transformer networks, I think it was covered in one of those earlier sessions, if I'm not wrong. They've typically quoted when do we use those transformer networks. I'll not go into that. That's not the scope of this talk either. Sorry, in advanced way. Yeah, advanced way, the two books that I've given you, right? Two modern day books, that is Charu C. Agarwal and the book written by Yoshio Bengio. They're excellent books to refer. Then apart, like you need to dig through the literature papers, the current state of the art papers. The Google Meet so that the messages and Q&A will not get overlapped. Fine, okay. No, I didn't get quite like what it is. Google Meet so that the messages and Q&A will not get overlapped. Oh, there's a Q&A session. Okay.
So is there anything like that? Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if there is
even
one.
I also don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
So if there are no questions, then I thank you for patiently listening to this session. Yeah, question, sir. Are there any publications with FCNN is better than RNN, or is it that RNN is best? Applications? Okay. No, I'm at least not aware of like if there is such a study where they've compared this FCNN with that of RNN. RNN, one of the major drawbacks is like any of these RNN LSTM, though they give excellent results, but one of the drawbacks is that like it requires huge amount of training time, because we cannot parallelize this algorithm unlike the fully connected network where parameters are independent, right? And we can distribute those computations to GPU, different cores, basically CUDA cores. Whereas when it comes to recurrent neural network, since the parameters are dependent from one hidden layer to another hidden layer, we cannot parallelize this training of recurrent neural network. So unlike what we do in fully connected network. CNNs are good at feature extraction. I don't know if it is it can handle those sequential data as well like RNN or LSTM. At least that's what I presume, but there might be counter arguments in the literature. One has to go through such papers. Yeah. Yeah. So if there are no questions, I'll stop at this point. I've taken a little more time of yours. Kindly excuse me for that. In fact, like you don't believe, I had LSTM, I had time delay neural network along with the standard presentation of that sequential model, but due to the limitation of this 1.5 hour, I've limited myself to recurrent neural network. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful presentation. And one nice thing about your presentation is that you encourage or you allowed these participants to interact during the session. So that's that's good and good. I hope that really helped participants to interact during the session.
Yeah.
So on behalf of the organizing, yeah, I really thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shivsankar. I'm also part of the organization, organizing committee. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you all. We'll meet tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. So tomorrow the session starts at 9:30. So
okay.
We'll follow the scheduled time. I mean, first session will start at 9:30, and second one it will start at 11:30, and in the afternoon it will start at 2 p.m.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sipsinkar. Yeah.
Thank you. And tomorrow also, yeah, participants. So I have already downloaded the videos. So yeah, I have to see how can I upload. I mean, whether I have to upload in Google Drive or in YouTube. That we are finding it. But tomorrow you will definitely get the link to download all the videos, whatever covered till now. And for the rest of the days, you can expect a 1 day delay. Okay. Yeah. So see you tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Okay.